Welcome into Backstretch Banter. It is a very exciting week here at RFK Racing. It is great to have you for this episode. I am Chris Childers, the host of the show. For the last several weeks, we've been talking about this team, how it's getting better, how the speed is there, and we said it's a matter of time. It's coming soon, the W. It came last weekend. It came at the Egg. It came in Darlington. Brad Keselowski in victory lane. It was kind of an odd end of the race because if you're an RFK fan, you were really pumped and then kind of pissed off all at one time, all at once because of what happened with Buescher and Reddick. For me, it was a range of emotions I've never felt before. I was like, yeah, but this sucks for 17. Anyway, Kevin Woods here with us to start the show because Kevin is going to be talking with the winner. In a couple of minutes, you're going to hear Kevin Woods with Brad Keselowski talking about the dub, talking about victory lane. Kevin Woods, what a weekend for RFK. How are you, sir?
Hey, Chris. Good to be here. Yeah, obviously a very exciting weekend. You reference Chris and Brad both going at it for the win there. At one point in time, we had 5 teams racing in a race here, and Jack used to say his idea of a perfect day would be all 5 of them coming to the finish line and 4 of them tearing it up and one of them getting the win. He wants them all up there, wants them competing, and that's what you had Sunday. And you feel bad for Chris, you feel great for Brad and the 6 guys. So, but that's what you have. It's kind of like children, it works sometimes.
Yep.
everybody can't win, and Brad got that one. But what a super exciting win, a big win for the organization.
Huge win for the organization. Brad's first as an owner with RFK. What was Monday like in the office? Now that the boss man's got the W out of the way, what was that feeling like back at headquarters?
Well, I think everybody's really excited, but, we talked about this before in racing. You have about halfway through victory lane before these guys' attentions will turn to the next race. And I know we have the AllStar this week, and that's certainly exciting, but I really think that there's a huge focus on the Coca-Cola 600 coming up. That's kind of a crown jewel event, and I think we feel like we're well positioned for it, and I think a lot of that excitement you'll see turn to that. Not belittling the All-Star in any way, but that Coke 600 is a big one, and I think it's circled on the calendars.
Well, the way things are going, the way the cars are running, you almost want to fast forward to the All-Star race because there's so much momentum. There's so much momentum. I know as a fan, I'm like, all right, let's go. I want to see 17 in victory lane. Now that we got 6 there, we got a team in the playoff locked in. It's done. Let's get them both. Let's do it back-to-back weeks. Get rid of all the guesswork. Get teams in the playoff and get excited for the stretch run. I got to believe it's coming for the 17, but for Brad to be in that position and to do it in that sweet ride, that Castrol car was just off the charts last week. It looked so cool to throw back. Big moment. I got to think for the sponsor and for the team, for Matt McCall, gratifying, but for Castrol to get the dub, how important was that this past weekend? They must have been thrilled.
Yeah, it's huge. You get into this thing for various reasons. If you look at a Castrol, not only is Castrol on the side of the car, Castrol's in the car, and we run that re-refined oil
absolutely
in the car, and to be able to do that and do it at that high of a level, it really validates the performance of the product as well as just the exposure. On the Chris note, years ago, Mark Martin used to tell me to win a race, you had to be in contention to win about 5 of them, and I think you can see Chris is, he's been as close to winning a race the last 2 weeks as possible. So you have to feel something good's coming for him soon.
Has to, as it did for Brad. I mean, Brad had, series of bad luck. I think at Daytona, Atlanta, what happened there early on in the season, just, some breaks didn't go the way, but it happened for Brad this past time. And like he said in the post race, sometimes we have so many things go against us. You need a little luck. You need a little magic. And that's exactly what happened for the team. Locked into the playoff. All is well right now. And like we said, the All-Star race coming up this week at North Wilkesboro. Give me an idea. We're going to hear from the driver, Brad, in a few minutes, and we're going to hear from Bob Pockrass in a little bit about where the team is. But what is the attitude right now? Now that a win is out of the way, how is this team treating All-Star weekend?
I think it's a great time particularly for the 6 team. It relieves that pressure, the playoff pressure, and you just kind of, go to the AllStar race and you kind of excel a little bit and can have a lot of fun with it. It's one of those events you either win it. There's really no second place in these type of events. You kind of go for broke, and it's good to relax a little bit from the pressure of points racing for a week. And and they go into that, and then, in the North Wilkesboro with a lot of history, and it's an exciting place, and races where Jack's cars won back in the day, so it's fun to be back there. The All-Star Week's a really fun week. It's a great week for the fans. It's a great week for the teams, and it's kind of unwind, and then you heat it back up for that 600 the next week. So exciting time here at RFK. Both cars up there each week fighting. We always say you want to fight for wins and compete for championships, and right now we're doing that.
Let's take a break. We'll come back, and you are going to talk to your boss. How convenient is that? Brad Keselowski is coming by. He's the K in the RFK. He happens to be the man that was in victory lane this past weekend with that Castrol Edge Ford Mustang #6. We'll talk to Brad. Kevin will. And then I'm going to talk to Bob Pockrass a little bit later on in the show. We got a lot to cover. It's All-Star Weekend on Backstretch Banter with RFK Racing. Chris Childers, Kevin Woods, stick around.
All right, here with Brad Keselowski, winner of Sunday's big throwback race in Darlington. A big win, Brad. How's your week been going so far?
Really busy, Kevin. Really busy. When you win, it's a huge blessing, but it comes with a lot of responsibilities to your fans, your sponsors, and then of course the media. And, those don't go away because you won. They actually increase. So you're really juggling all these different things. That was my juggling motion. I don't know. I'm not a good juggler, but you get the point. So you juggle all those things as much as you can. And, it can be difficult to manage, but, we'd call those winning problems. If I had my Charlie Sheen shirt on, those are winning problems of how to manage it all. But it's been good. We were with our friends in the Navy and with Build Submarines yesterday in Virginia. Did some fun things with them that we had planned even before we won the race, but then they kind of added on to it with some victory celebration, which was great. And of course Monday, whether you win or lose, we still do a debrief, right? And we talk about everything that happened, because there's usually, even in races that you win, things that you're like, oh, we could have done that better. And you just want to get all those out on the table, right, and look at them and work through them. And then, of course, there's media obligations, right, whether it be on TV or whatnot. I had my daughter on Fox and Friends yesterday. She was pumped about being in Victory Lane. So that was super cool, along with doing this show here. So it's good to be on here. I think I made a deal. I don't know if it was with the devil or who it was, that if we won a race, I would be on this show. So here I am. I'm on. You got me, Woods.
We got you. Quick question. I'm going a little off script here. But, we caught you. NASCAR sent some video over, and we caught you and Paige talking, and you made a comment about to not rush it and to actually enjoy the moment. And I've been here a while, and I've seen a lot of victory lanes. And very few times I've seen someone actually kind of slow down and enjoy the moment. Can you talk about being able to do that a minute? And is that something that comes with maturity?
Yeah, it's certainly something I think comes with time. I guess I dreamed of having my whole family in Victory Lane. And we had talked about it a lot over the last year, because we thought we were going to win any moment. And it's like, man, I really want my wife and kids there. And, my wife and I talk about it a lot, and making sure that she would even, call or text me if we'd had a good practice and it was a race she wasn't planning on being at. Should we come? And depending on how good I felt about the car, they might show up or might not show up. And I had a really good feeling about Darlington, and I told her she was going to be there anyway, but I told her most definitely you need to be there. I think we're going to run really well at Darlington, and even Kansas the week before. And so you do all this to prepare for it, and when it happens, you're like, all right, slow down. This is what we wanted. This is what we've been preparing for. Don't let anybody rush us through this. And I was glad we did, because, I think some of that connects back to, Kevin, when I was a kid, my dad was a race car driver. And he won his last race in 1997 at Richmond in the Truck Series. And I remember where I was. I was in my grandma's house because we couldn't go to the race. School had just started. It was the first day of school that day. It was a Thursday, and I wasn't there for it. No, I just remember being so sad to not be there with my dad in Victory Lane for his last win. And I really wanted my kids to not have that memory. And then I also remember the last win I was at. I was a really young kid. I think it was 1993 when my dad had won an ARCA race, and I was there. And I remember just that feeling of just pure joy and excitement. You know, I guess I would have been 9 years old at the time, and just thinking that this was as good as life gets. And, you know, I just wanted that same moment for my family, for my daughters and for my wife. And my youngest or oldest daughter is 8 years old, and she's old enough that I think she's going to remember that, you know, like a core memory that she carries when she gets older. My second child, Autumn, she's 4. She's probably not going to remember. And my son, Maze, he's 6 months. He's definitely not going to remember. But that's okay. I'm glad for her, for Scarlett, that she'll have that core memory, and I hope that's something that she remembers about our family and her dad long after I'm gone.
Well, that's certainly refreshing to see that. Switching gears a little bit, you talked about, you know, there's still being your debrief. There's still things you could do better, do different, and obviously being the co-owner of a multi-car team. You know, Jack used to say that, you know, with multi-car teams on your best day, only one of them's going to win. So somebody's always not. So that perspective. But in this instance, you talk about that last 30 or so laps when the race went green, and you went to battling for the lead, and then you know, got to up close see the other car, you know, with Chris battling for the lead. Can you talk about, you know, those last 30 laps? What was going through your mind as you were trying to get the lead, and then Chris had it, and just kind of how that plays out, and how you think of it with both the owner hat and the driver hat?
So, you know, when we started the third stage, we restarted second behind Tyler Reddick. And we ran behind him for a little while there, and I felt like I was a little bit better. My car was really good in the long runs. And so when we passed him with about 60 laps to go, I thought, all right, let's just hope this race stays green and it finishes out, right? And if it does that, I think we can win. I got to nail the green flag pit stop, and then I got to take care of the car getting through traffic. But I'm feeling pretty good about this race, Kevin. And so we pit with about 51, 52 laps to go, and I come out, and I'm still in the lead. We nailed the pit sequence. Pit crew did awesome. I got on pit road well. And I'm like, okay, the race is in our hands. And sure enough, with about 35 laps to go or 10, 15 laps later, a yellow comes out. I'm going, oh, gosh. I had complete control of this race. I was feeling pretty good about it. I knew the 45 car, Tyler Reddick, was running second. I knew he had the first pit stall on pit road, which is a huge advantage at Darlington. And when we came down pit road and I was pulling out and I saw him leaving at the same time, I knew he got to the line before we did. I'm like, oh, no. Now I'm going to restart second. And it took me, 40-some laps to pass him the last run. I'm like, well, I do the math here. There's 35 laps to go. It took me 40-some laps to pass him last time. Like, that's not good math, right? That's 5 laps not in my favor. And as I was thinking through that, I'm like, I got to get him on this restart. And, I was running really hard trying to pass him. I just couldn't clear him. We made contact getting into 3 one time. He was trying to run me down. I was trying to keep him up. And I got him all the way to my back bumper, but I couldn't pass him. And finally, after about 2 or 3 laps, we went down to the 3 and 4, and I started to lose the handling a little bit as the tires wore out. And I slid up, and we rubbed fenders a little bit. And when we did, I got out of the gas because I didn't want to wreck Tyler or myself. And Chris drove by both of us. Chris was running in third at that time. And when he went by us, I went, oh, no, I've just lost this race. And Chris, you sly dog, you got me. And sure enough, he drove on to lead. And I thought the race was over. I thought we were going to run third. I thought Chris would just run away with it. But Chris started to get really loose. He had some damage on his car from an incident that happened earlier. And Tyler was right on his back bumper, and I'm right behind both of them. I'm not strong enough in the dirty air between the two to get by them both, but I'm strong enough to keep them honest. So, I'm thinking to myself, let's just stay close here and see what happens. And Chris got really loose in 1 and 2. Tyler got a huge run off of turn 2, and he poked his nose low entering 3. I knew exactly what he was thinking in the moment. I'm like, oh, he's going to try to slide job him. And I'm like, that's not a good idea. He's not close enough to him, and Chris's car has fallen off, but hasn't fallen off that much. And sure enough, when he drove in there, I'm like, yep, here comes the slide job, and he's not going to be clear. And, they made contact. And when that happened, I'm like, oh, let's go get both of them. But I couldn't do anything. I got super tight, and I couldn't pass both of them. And next thing I knew, Tyler had a flat tire, and I was able to get by him when he had a flat tire. And I'm like, all right, I guess it's just going to be Chris and I. And I'm already starting to formulate my plan. Like, okay, I know Chris is struggling. He's just made contact with the wall. That didn't make his car any faster. Let's think about how I'm going to set him up to pass him. And like, as soon as I'm starting to, like, go through that thought process in my mind over about a second or two down the backstretch, Chris got a flat tire and pulls down pit road. And it was just strange feeling of excitement and disappointment at the same time. Like excitement in the sense of, oh, I got the lead now, and I'm back in control of the race. And then disappointment in the sense of, well, that ruined Chris's day, and I don't get to race him for the win. We're not going to have a 1-2 finish. So, it's that kind of strange range of emotions, which seems to happen a lot with Chris and I. When he won Daytona, it was that strange range of emotions. And when he won Michigan, one track I've been trying to win at for a while now, I'm like, dang it, we were good enough to win that. We just didn't get there. So it's that strange range of emotions, Kevin. But, all in all, it was still a really solid day, and he's got a lot to be proud of. And I'm glad we were able to win.
I guess when you look at it that way, I mean, it's been a couple of years into this thing, and it hadn't been without its struggles. But, where do you feel about where RFK is now? And honestly, the fact that you guys are literally up there almost every week, battling each other and battling the field for a win. And that's a long way from where, we were a few years ago, just to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, this is my third season, and we're not quite halfway through. We're probably about a third of the way through it. So about 2 1/3 is what I would say is what I'm into my time here at RFK. And, the first year was a big struggle. We had to go through a huge reset. We probably took a step backwards to take 2 steps forward. It was painful. We started to get somewhere, I think, at the end of 22, but by then the playoffs had already started. Nobody really paid attention to it or noticed it. Then we started 23, and it's like the 23 season. And I felt like we were, about a 10th place team between our two teams. 8th to 10th on any given weekend was about where we would rank. And, if things went our way, we had a shot at winning. And Chris was able to win 3 races, and we were in a shot to win probably 4 or 5 and weren't able to do it. But all in all, we were like that 8th to 10th place range. And, as we got to the back half of 23, it's like, well, we can keep doing things the way we're doing them, and we'll probably be a 10th place team next year amongst our 2 cars on average. Or we can, address some of our weaknesses and see if we can't, elevate another notch. And that was a really difficult conversation internally here with our management team, because taking that next step meant going backwards again. It meant, changing some roles. It meant changing some tools and candidly just doing things that would hurt us in the short run to be better in the long run. And I kind of call it the, 1 step back for 2 steps forward approach. And, in that sense, we started off 24 here, and probably the first 6 or 7 weeks, we definitely took a step back. No doubt about it, from where we finished in 23. And then I feel like as we got into the late April time period, we started to kind of pull back even to where we were at the end of 23. And as we've kind of entered this late May period, I think we're starting to recognize that second step forward that puts us in a position where, we can be a top 5 teams rather than the top 10 teams we were at the end of 23. So that's super exciting to me. We still have a lot more work to do to fully recognize that progress. But it makes me feel like our best times are still ahead.
Excellent. Real quick, let's talk about this weekend, the AllStar Race. Is that a decent chance to kind of just unwind for a weekend from points racing and go have a little bit of fun?
Yeah, the AllStar Race in itself is a kind of a load off your shoulders, right? You know, I was just watching film review of the 23 AllStar Race, and as I was watching, I found myself shrugging my shoulders, going, yeah, that didn't really matter to anything. I want to win the race. If you don't win, nothing else really matters in that race. It's funny how that feeling kind of just goes through your body. Where most races, obviously, you know, a good day is a good day. Whether it's if it's not a win, you can still have a good day running, you know, second, third, fourth. The All-Star Race isn't that way. There's only one good day. It's winning the race. And I think that makes that race unique. But, you know, on top of that, having won this past week in Darlington, you know, there's that weight off our shoulders of just getting that win. And I think that feels really good.
Is the 600 something you guys have circled?
Yeah, I feel good about the 600, you know, where we're going and things we're working on. You know, it's a great racetrack for me. It's you know, big racetrack inside our sport because of the teams being so close to the track. You know, when they take cars out there to practice or test, when the wind's right, we can hear them in our shop. And that gives you an idea just how close the track is to us and how much it means to us. So we want to have a great day there. We had fast cars there last year and got wrecked, which was disappointing. I suspect we'll have fast race cars there again, and then you know, we'll be able to contend for that win.
In terms of real quick, you talked about winning the race and that pressure of the playoffs and being a little bit off. How does that change your mindset as you go forward?
Yeah, I mean, it gets rid of the points day and the points day, stage finish, you know, kind of prioritization, right? And it allows us to just focus on what do we need to do to be in contention to win.
Last thing, I know guys don't like to do this. The win Sunday, as you rank your wins, I think you have 36 wins. Where does it rank?
Whew. I don't know. It's definitely in the top 10. It's probably right on the fringe of top 5. You know, your first win, nothing will ever touch your first win. That's just my personal opinion. Your first win as a Cup driver, nothing can touch it. It's the highest of highs that I've had in my career. And it's a moment that, you know, I can remember every moment of that day. So it's hard to beat that, right? But this is pretty special as well. You know, it's right up there with winning the Brickyard or winning my first race at Daytona. Those were special wins, winning playoff races. So I'd put it a solid top 10, somewhere between 5th to 10th.
How many more are you looking to get this year?
You know, my goal entering the season, Kevin, was to be able to win 5 races amongst our 2 teams. You know, last year we had a great season, won 3 races amongst the 2 teams. Of course, Chris did all 3 of them. But I'd like to see us win 5 races amongst our 2 teams this year. That's my goal.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate you for joining us today. And, you know, like our deal, if you get those 5 wins, we got 4 more times with you on here. So we'll look forward to
That's my deal with it's not the devil, it's my deal with Kevin. And Backstretch Banter. By the way, I love the sign behind me. Probably the YouTube guys can see it, but maybe the Sirius XM people can't. It's nice to see us come together and thankful to everyone who watches and listens.
Thank you, Brad. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
We're back here. It is Backstretch Banter with RFK Racing, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio, Channel 90. I'm Chris Childers. We got one of the legends with us right now, somebody that I just love. I keep up with daily on social media. Every time I'm at a track with my buddies, they say, there's Bob. Bob Pockrass just walked by. He's the guy. He's like Mr. NASCAR. He's really one of those dudes that you just associate with the sport. Bob Pockrass, Fox Sports, journalist to the stars. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great and glad to be on Backstretch Banter.
Backstretch Banter. We're not like the Backstreet Boys or anything like that.
Well, now you're the front stretch boys because you're
the Backstretch boys
after this weekend with the big win.
No, well, the last couple weekends have been a little backstretch boyish when you look at what happened with Mr. Buescher 2 weeks ago in the finish line with Kyle Larson, 0.0001 or something like that was the finish. And then last week, Brad Keselowski said, enough of this. We need to be in victory lane as a team. That's exactly what happened, even though Buescher was in a precarious spot at the end. But Bob, you cover the sport. You cover it so thoroughly. from your perspective, how do you view this team the last couple of weeks going into the All-Star race, sir?
Well, I view this team certainly better than I viewed them after the first few weeks of the season. That's for sure. Certainly making progress. I may have looked at Brad Keselowski a little bit quizzically in the sense when he would say that he saw potential in this new dark horse body. I wasn't seeing it, or obviously it's not something I can see, but the results were not the best. And now you see what they've been done the last few weeks, and you're like, oh, well, maybe there's a reason Brad knows a little bit more than me about all this stuff, right? It shows that if you have a plan and you have an idea and you believe in what can be, if you have the processes in place to get there, it may not come as quick as you want it to, but it should come at some point.
And it's come, and hopefully it comes some more. And hopefully, from our perspective, we can get the 17 in victory lane and get the playoffs all done and be happy as we get closer to the playoff portion of the season. But certainly it's good to have one team in the playoff locked in at number 6. And it was really close to being back-to-back weeks with Buescher and Keselowski, even though Kyle Larson was the technical winner a couple weeks ago. But the team's rocking right now. Certainly, as you said, from the beginning of the season to where they're at, there has been incredible progress. How do you view Ford overall? There's so much talk about Ford at the beginning of the year. Now that there's a team in victory lane, is there a thought from people like you behind the scenes that cover the sport that this is really a 3-manufacturer race moving forward?
I think it's getting closer. I wouldn't say that it's there just yet. Now, we talk about Ford until last week not winning, but you talk by a matter of 4 or 5 inches, Ford could have had a couple of wins, right?
Yeah.
So it's so close, but when things are that close, it's the small gains that you make, and when you have a new body, oftentimes it takes you a while to learn how to make those gains. And during races, you might make changes that you think should help, but when everything is a little bit new, you learn that they don't. And so to me, it's just part of the process of that you at times have to tune yourself out of the ability to win before you can, during a race, tune yourself into the ability to win.
What is Brad Keselowski, now that we've seen him in victory lane, now that the streak is over? He's a former champion who had just been kind of dealing with that statistic. Anytime I watch Fox, I would see, most races without a win. Brad Keselowski, now that that's over, and I think you kind of saw it at the end of the race last week in Darlington, just the fan appreciation for Brad, what he means to the sport of NASCAR. They stuck around. They gave him a heck of an ovation. What does Brad mean in this changing sport, this evolving sport? The fact that this guy's been around a while, he's now owning, he's a part of this new revolution with the next-gen car. What does Brad mean to NASCAR?
Well, I think it's pretty simple. He's the first driver to win in his own car since Tony Stewart at Sonoma, I want to say in 2016. So for 8 years, you haven't had a driver who owns a team and wins a race. And I think people respect that. People know how difficult it is. If the guy who drives the 11 car, I don't know, can I say his name on are we allowed to say? Okay. Denny Hamlin. If Denny Hamlin were to drive for 23-11 and wins, I think there's fewer boos, because I just think people know and respect how much it takes to put in, to win with your own organization. And look, the R in RFK is beloved by so many people, and so many, when you talk about people whose parents watch the sport, whose grandparents watch the sport, they were watching Jack Roush in some form of motorsports, and then in NASCAR. And so to be able for Brad to come here and put RFK into victory lane, and to have Jack Roush there, I think I don't know that you can really measure how much that means to the people who watched the sport decades ago, as well as to probably new fans as well. So you have the guy who is who gets tipsy 10 minutes into a championship celebration, and the guy who's worked all his life looking at all the spark plugs and everything in the engines and coming together to win races. And it's again, it's something that I think the diehard fan and the new fan can appreciate.
So I think so too, and it's been really cool to see Brad work with these guys, to work with the 17, to have the kind of relationship that he has. Nobody said a bad word about the guy. Now, granted, he's the boss, but certainly he's a guy that really, really cares about the results, and he really, really cares about going the extra mile. And he's a good dude. And I think it was just kind of cool on Mother's Day to see him and his kids. And it's just, I look at Brad as kind of like John Everyman. I could see myself be Brad Keselowski. You know what I mean? And I think it's cool when you see a guy that's just nice and approachable to have that kind of success. And it was great to see him back in victory lane. How about Chris Buescher? He got in victory lane 3 times last year. Bob Pockrass, by the way, our guest, the famed journalist, the journalist. He's like the Will Buxton of NASCAR, if you will. Will on the F1 side of things. But we got to start getting you in all the documentaries, though. I mean, you got to be the guy. I want you like to be a superstar everywhere you go. But he's fantastic, Bob is, and he is the guy when it comes to covering the sport. So I'm sure you have your opinions on Buescher, his career. Started with a previous organization, had a moderate amount of success. Victory lane finally came, and then it kept coming, and now we're waiting for it to happen again this year. But your thought on Buescher and where he is going in his career at this point is what?
Oh, that's a great question. I think he is a guy that you, especially after last year, that you feel like you can count on for a couple wins a year at least, that he's going to make the playoffs. And when everything is right, he is going to be able to take that car and potentially vie for a championship. Now, do you say, is Chris Buescher going to be somebody who's a championship contender year in and year out? I think that's still to be determined. But he is somebody that is going to take what he's got in his car and what the team has and make the most of it. And he's going to, and a lot of times he's going to maybe finish better than where it should. So I just you look at him as somebody who just incredibly talented and incredibly I would say he's meticulous is kind of the way I would look at it. If he has a 10th place car, I don't think Chris Buescher is going to win with it, but he's going to finish somewhere between 5th and 10th and not 15th. And I think and there's not a lot of guys you can say that about.
He's very, very good. He is. And we are so happy to have him as a part of this team. And I think he's just getting better every single week. What did you think of the incident that happened with Reddick? Reddick was certainly apologetic. Buescher was in position again to maybe win the race, and he was pissed, and rightfully so. And he, put hands on Reddick at the end. And I was a little surprised, knowing Chris the way that I do and getting to work with him on this show several weeks now. And he's about as polite and non-confrontational of a human, but I get it. That's high emotions in the sport, and he had a chance to win, and he referenced the checker flag on the car. He's like, I need this. I need to get in the playoff. What did you think? Who was in the wrong? What did you make of it?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, even Tyler Reddick admitted that he was in the wrong, and I think he truly felt that way. I don't think it was just because he knew that if Chris Buescher landed a haymaker that that he wasn't going to have a whole lot of chance that he wasn't going to win that battle for sure. So, but I do think, Tyler Reddick, it certainly admitted the mistake. It was a bad mistake. You can almost turn it back a little bit on Chris and saying, like, when you're racing a guy with a win, will they race you a little bit more without, I don't want to say without respect, but with maybe less concern because they know that they have that in their pocket. I don't see Tyler Reddick as that type of driver, but there might be some other drivers out there who do. But, look, I think it was, you want drivers to be emotional. You want drivers to be mad. He didn't do anything to Tyler that he shoved him a little bit, but I think that was it. It wasn't. I don't think he left a mark on Tyler. So I think it was all good in that sense. And look, it just shows how badly he wants to win. It probably shows not just how hard Chris Buescher has worked this year and in past to get to that point where he's challenging for wins on back-to-back weeks, but probably for how much his team has worked and the whole organization has worked to get wins and to run up front, and knowing that it was taken away by a dumb move is, I think anybody would be frustrated in that point.
It's frustrating. There's no doubt. It's definitely frustrating for the guys, but got to put it behind them. AllStar Race this week, and then focus on Charlotte. Focus on the Coke race on the holiday weekend. Bob Pockrass, our guest, the journalist of journalists. He is Mr. NASCAR, Fox Sports. We'll take a break in a minute, but before we do, and I want to get into your whole career and how you got into NASCAR and the decades you've been doing it and how the sport's changed. But how do you feel about where we're at right now? There was so much written the last few years about declining attendance, declining viewership. I gotta believe we're in a good spot, or a better spot than we've been. The races are good. They're exciting. When I turn them on, there seems to be a good amount of people that are in the stands. What is the state of NASCAR in your opinion right now?
Well, I think when you walk down pit road or you're in the garage before the race, there's a great vibe. And it's one of those where that people who love the sport are coming to watch and embrace it. And it looks like maybe they're starting to get their friends to come with them again. I think a lot of those people have always been there, but now they're able to to either get to a race or they're following it even more closely. But I think they're starting to bring their friends along as well. And look, you've had some of the best finishes. You can't argue with some of these finishes this year.
Oh yeah,
and you have that Hamlin guy wearing the black hat and egging everybody on. You've got Kyle Larson, who's doing the double in a couple of weeks, which is just going to make it grow even more.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have, and then we're watching this great storyline with RFK battling for wins, and you're wondering, gosh, are the other Ford teams going to follow and make this? And by the time you get to the playoffs, it's going to be nobody's going to be able to predict who's going to be running up front.
Let's take a break. Bob Pockrass with us, Fox Sports. We got more. We're going to talk about Bob's career, get into his life. An Indianapolis kid. How did you fall in love with NASCAR, not IndyCar? Let's talk about it when we come back on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio. We're back here. It's Backstretch Banter, SiriusXM NASCAR Radio. I'm Chris Childers. Big thank you to everybody today. Elijah Burke for stepping in and putting the show together back in Charlotte. I want to thank Alec Walt in DC for helping us out, our producer for SiriusXM, Kevin Woods, who was my co-host today with Brad Keselowski. A lot of fun. Brandon Lee, of course, fantastic. And Thomas Burfield, wherever you are, we miss you this week, my friend. You're a gem. Bob Pockrass still with us from Fox Sports, the journalist of journalists when it comes to NASCAR. Bob, how did you fall in love with NASCAR? You've been covering it now for years. I think you're coming up on over 3 decades of being around the sport. But I read you're from Indianapolis, which is IndyCar territory and then some. So how'd you get into it?
Well, I moved to Indianapolis when I was 10, so I certainly followed IndyCar racing. And I often tell people I thought every track had stands on the inside as well as the outside, because my point of reference was Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And then when I got a job with the Daytona Beach News Journal in '91, covering all sorts of sports, and I was like, oh, you can actually see all the way around the track from the grandstands. That was my introduction to NASCAR, not just at a place like Daytona, but of places like Volusia County Speedway and the short tracks around Florida.
The Stetson Hatters, I was told, was one of your beats back in the day, which is kind of awesome. When you graduated, did you think you were just going to be an everything writer? You were going to focus on football and basketball and all those kind of things? Like Stetson Hatters is a rather competitive Division I basketball program, but certainly the furthest thing away from motorsports. And one of the great, for those that don't know, the name of the hat is literally the name of the school. It's named after the Stetson guy, which is why they're called the Hatters. But did you ever in a million years think you were going to go motorsports?
I didn't really know what I was going to do. I thought I'd cover sports, and wherever that took me, it took me. I didn't think I would be working. If you asked me if I would be working for TV networks like I have been the last 10 years, that would probably be more of a surprise than any. I liked being the quiet person sitting on pit road and going in the locker room and chatting with people. I was not expecting to have to do podcasts because I didn't know what they were. I didn't expecting to do video vlogs and all that kind of stuff. All that was not around when I graduated in 1991.
Not around at all. Not even close. I mean, it was about as simple the coverage as it possibly could be. I think all of us over the years have tried to figure out different ways. I mean, it's the same sport, but the technology and the way that you access it is completely different. And the way that you cover it and relay it to people that are interested in the sport is completely different over the years. So certainly the technology's made it different. It's made it easier in some ways, but maybe even more challenging to stand out in other ways as well. But it's a brand new era. There are so many different things. Like you said, you're working for networks, you're vlogging, you're doing all kinds of things. In your opinion, give me your firsthand view of how NASCAR has evolved, of what it's become. You've kind of seen different ebbs and flows. You've seen the highest of highs. And, Jeff Gordon and that era where, ratings were through the roof. But the evolution of it, in your words, how would you describe your journey and the sports journey while you've been in it?
Well, I would say it's a little bit of a roller coaster, when you watch about the ebbs and flows of NASCAR. But if you look at the car industry, it probably is similar to that. And when people ask me, where is NASCAR going to be in 5 years or 10 years, I tell them it's hard to know where the car industry is going to be in 5 years or 10 years, and how people love the automobile and have passion for it has changed as well. You used to go to Talladega, and every car in the Talladega parking lot would have Calvin and Hobbes stickers of them urinating on the logo of another car manufacturer, right? You don't see that as often. And so the challenge that everybody has in this sport is how to tap into what makes people passionate about cars, about racing, and about personalities.
Good racing helps. I think it certainly helps. I think doing things that the fans understand certainly helps in another world as well. And, NASCAR has been good and bad at that over the last couple of years, has been well documented. How do you view the car? The next gen car gave us a lot of promises. Do you think it's delivered on the promises as far as the racing?
I think it's getting there. It's getting there. Look, I always say that you don't want races decided by somebody who looks like me sitting in the corner of a shop developing a piece or a setup, right? You want your crew chief and you want your driver to make a difference. And I think if you looked at that race at Darlington, you would say, yeah, the driver and probably the crew chief made a difference. And I think the more races that you can have like that, the better off you are.
How many hours a week do you work to do the coverage that you do? How many phone hours, phone calls, hours at a computer, Fox stuff? I got to imagine to deliver the sport as intensive as you do, you're spending quite a bit of time doing it.
Yeah, I would probably have to add up the amount of sleep I get and then take off maybe another 5 to 10 hours a week, and then that would probably be the amount of hours. I mean, it's a lot.
It's all encompassing, is what you're saying.
It's daily. It's often 10 to 12 hours a day. And, there is no, you never know when you're going to get a text with somebody saying, hey, this is what I heard, or this is what's going on. So, so it varies, but, it's, especially during race weekend, if you're at the track, from whenever the first garage opens to when tech is over, can be 10 to 12 to 14, 15 hours. And then, on a daily basis, you're talking about 8 to 10 hours. And then look, even when I go for a run, if I'm listening to a podcast it's probably a racing podcast. So I don't know
Sure.
if you count that as work as well.
I think so, because you want to know what people are saying. You want to get different opinions out there. I think all of it ties into work. So what you're saying is that it's all encompassing. It's one of those things you better love it, because it's going to be happening all day long, and there really is no time off. Well, Bob, we enjoyed it. Thanks for all your hard work, and thanks for coming on and telling us your story and talking some RFK, and we appreciate your time. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
All right, that's going to wrap it up today. We thank everybody for listening. It is yet another edition of Backstretch Banter with RFK Racing. I'm Chris Childers, and we'll see you next week after the AllStar Race as we head to the Coke Race in Charlotte, right here, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio, Channel 90.